and put those in the chat. And Carrie will be able to get to those. Also, if you have questions along the way, you don't want to come off mute, feel free to put that in the chat as well. And we'll be able to help you with that. There'll also be opportunities to ask questions throughout the presentation. And then we'll also have questions at the end too. So our agenda for today, we're just going to go over the goals of the program, some eligibility requirements, things of that nature. We'll get into the criteria that your application will be scored on by panelists. We'll also talk a little bit about the paneling process as well. We'll go over the narrative questions in the application, the documents that you're required to upload, work samples, and also, again, we'll have time for questions at the end. And also just a quick reminder, if you haven't yet, please look over the request for applications document. That will be mostly what we're talking about today in our workshop, but there's also some other little things in the RFA that could be helpful just to help you determine if this is the right program for your organization, and if you meet the requirements. And that can be found on our website on the general operating support page. And yeah. Another thing that's new this year, we have switched grant portals to submittable. In this meeting today, we won't really be going into detail about submittable, how to navigate the new platform. So if you do have questions about that, maybe how to set up your profile or how to upload documents, please attend one of these online meetings as well. So there'll be one on Monday, April 13th, and there'll be another one on Thursday, April 23rd. And yeah, you'll be able to ask questions specifically about submittable. We also have online live chats every Friday until the close of the application. So those are a little less formal than today. There won't be a PowerPoint or anything. That'll just be an opportunity for you to hop on a Zoom call with grant managers and ask any questions. So if questions come up while you're filling out your application, feel free to attend one of these virtual live chats. The link to the live chats and also the submittable meetings are on our Eventbrite page, which you used to register today. We can also put that link in the chat too, but you'll register for those the same way you registered for today. So just a quick overview of the general operating support goals. So this program is aimed to offer operating support for nonprofits, arts, humanities, and arts education organizations. And we want to ensure that these organizations are opening way for district residents to engage in arts and humanities or arts education programming and services. We also aim to enhance the capacity and stability of these organizations, and then again, just strengthen the arts and humanities nonprofit ecosystem in DC. And this program is aimed towards organizations whose primary mission focuses on one or more arts or humanities disciplines. Those disciplines are also listed in the request for applications. They go into a little bit more detail about how we define those disciplines, and we also match that up with NEA categories as well. So the meeting today is for the capacity building cohort, but we do offer two other application avenues. Capacity building is going to be for first-time applicants with for GOS, but also if you've never gotten a grant before with CAH, you will apply through this category. And this really focuses on being able to provide capacity building funding, so that maybe you could build out your organization. You can use it for staff training, longer organizational initiatives, sector strengthening, and increasing awareness and access for your programming. The other two categories are going to be for returning grantees. So if you had gotten GOS in the past, you'd be able to apply for our generalist category, which is just going to be for arts and humanities organizations. And then the service organizations are going to be for those organizations who specifically focus on professional development, technical assistance, networking opportunities, operational services, and printed materials or research for DC-based arts and humanities organizations. So we're going to go over each of the eligibility requirements and just talk about those a little bit, and then you'll also be able to ask questions as well. So the first eligibility requirement for this program is that you will have to be a 501c3 nonprofit for at least 1 year. And that will mean that you're going to have the IRS letter of determination, which you'll upload as well with your application. On that letter, it should be dated at least 1 year prior than before the application deadline, which is May 5th. Yes, and then the next eligibility requirement is that your organization should be registered and authorized to do business in the District of Columbia. So you would have worked with the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection and also obtain a tax ID for your organization. Your organization will also need to have a primary mission that focuses on one or more of the arts or humanities disciplines. Again, those are listed out in the request for applications. You can also find that in our guide to grants as well, with specific definitions. And we'll be able to see that your organization's primary focus is on that in your organization's IRS Form 990. If you don't have a 990, which a lot of capacity building organizations might not, you'll submit a 990 postcard in place of that. This requirement obviously does not apply to capacity building, but for the other two avenues of general operating support, you would have had to have received a grant award from CAH at some point. You should ensure that at least 51% of the organization's activities occur within DC. Ensure that 100% of the grant awards dollars are going to be used to support DC personnel and or programming. You should have devoted at least 51% of the organization's previous year's cash expenses on programming and services in the arts and humanities. Again, if you're not submitting a 990 and instead you have a 990 postcard, you're going to submit bank statements for your organization's previous fiscal year that would indicate that you have at least spent 51% of your cash expenses on arts and humanities programming. You'll also need an active board of directors, which we ask for this documentation as well in the application. Again, you'll want to make sure that your organization is registered to do business in the District of Columbia. You should have worked with some of these offices as well to, again, obtain that tax ID and make sure that you're able to do business here. You'll also be needing to obtain a certificate of clean hands from the Office of Tax and Revenue. You should be in good standing with CAH. This doesn't necessarily apply to capacity building. To be in good standing, that would mean that you submitted all previous reports for other grants that you've received from us. And lastly, your principal business address should be in the District of Columbia. So wherever whatever address you use to file taxes for your organization, that should be a DC address. We don't allow PO boxes though for this. Now we'll talk a bit about the allowable costs for the program and unallowable costs. We can also get into specifics if you have specific questions about this, but just a quick list. You can use these funds for staff salaries, teaching artists, consultants, travel and transportation that's directly related to the scope of arts and humanities programming, materials, supplies, and other equipment related to the work of the organization, maintenance and administration of the organization's programming, indirect costs, and an operating reserve. So there is an option to use some of the funds for an operating reserve. More information is detailed about that in the request for applications as well. Some unallowable costs would be food and beverages, tuition and scholarships, expenses associated with an organization assuming the role of a fiscal agent, costs related to fundraisers, lobbying, and special events, expenses unrelated to the execution of the organization's scope of work, funding to universities, governments or DC government agencies, and including DCPS, and re-granting is also not allowed. So, if you are planning to apply for the general operating support, you should also know that you're able to apply for one other project grant. And we have multiple of those. So, one of them is the Arts and Humanities Education Program, the East Arts Program, the Field Trip Experiences Program, public art building communities. And then for capacity building, you're also allowed to apply and receive projects, events, and festivals for your organization. You're also allowed to apply and receive one capacity grant, but that's also our capital projects grant. So we have a small capital projects and a large capital projects grants. These grants open up later in the grant season, so be on the lookout for information on those. And then the way in which your application is going to be reviewed is going to be through a panel process. We typically split up all of our GOS applicants based on what application category they applied under. Then we also split that further into the budget size of the organization. Typically for capacity building, since most applicants are submitting a postcard 990 or they have a smaller budget, we'll still panel all of them together. But for our generalists and service organizations, we typically make sure that the panel is made up of organizations with similar budget sizes. So, again, our panels are made up of community members that come from diverse backgrounds, and CAH staff chooses panelists who have expertise in the program area, especially for GOS. We typically choose panelists who have background in organizational management, arts and humanities program management, and the panelists review the application based on the review criteria, which we'll get into in a second. Panelists typically review 20 to 25 applications per panel. So let's say 40 people applied to the capacity building cohort, we would split up applications into two panels. Funding recommendations are based on the panel scores and the final ranking of those scores. And capacity building is typically flat funding. For the past 2 years, we've given everyone who's been awarded the same amount. But again, we won't know that final amount until we make funding recommendations in the fall. And just a quick reminder about the application. It will be closing May 5th at 5 p.m. and submittable. You'll want to make sure that you've answered all of the narrative questions and you've uploaded all of the required documents. After the application's been submitted, CAH staff will do an internal review of applications. So we're just looking to make sure that the application's complete, you've uploaded everything that's required, and you meet the eligibility requirements of the program. If we feel that anything's missing, we'll reach out to you in the 2 to 3 week period we have before we move on to the paneling process. Any questions so far about the program overview or paneling? Feel free to come off mute or put a question in the chat. All right, well, we can move into the application review criteria. So again, your application will be reviewed by a committee of panelists, and they're going to use these review or these criteria areas to score your application. The areas are capacity and sustainability, artistic merit, community access and engagement, and community impact. You'll notice also on the application that your application split up into those categories. So you'll kind of get a good understanding of what questions and answers the panelists are going to be specifically looking at to address those criteria. So the first one for capacity and sustainability, this is going to be 40% of a 100% or a 100-point scale. And so within capacity and sustainability, panelists are going to be looking for, does the organization demonstrate through the support materials and financial documents the appropriate oversight, financial controls, and governance to deliver its services and programming? And then does the organization have the necessary expertise and administrative personnel in place to deliver services and programming? So that is split up into two different points, both being 20%. The next review criteria is artistic merit, and that's 30% of your overall score. The panelists are going to be looking at, does the organization's mission and vision, are they supported by work samples and support materials provided? Does the organization's programs, projects, or initiative demonstrate their knowledge of and skills in their content area? And does the organization's programs, projects, or initiatives utilize personnel with demonstrated arts, humanities, and/or arts education expertise? The next review criteria is access and engagement. So they're going to be looking at, does the organization demonstrate intentionality in ensuring its programming is accessible to diverse communities? And does the organization demonstrate that DC residents are its core audience for its programming and services? And then our last review criteria is community impact, worth 20 points. The first 10 points being, does the organization include qualitative and quantitative evaluation strategies to determine organizational impact and details changes implemented to ensure continued and future growth? And does the organization demonstrate a commitment to hiring DC residents, arts, and humanities professionals to deliver its programming? So again, you'll see in the application that each of those criteria are broken up into the questions that we ask and also your support material work samples. So I'm going to go into some of the narrative questions that are related to the review criteria and what the application is asking for. So for the arts and humanities projects and programs, you're going to list at least one arts and humanities program or project that will occur during the grant period. So the grant period is going to be October 2026 to September 2027. So you're going to list at least one arts and humanities project that is occurring within that year. You'll be able to describe how much the program costs, how much attendance you're anticipating, and also just provide an overview of what the program is. For capacity and sustainability, you're going to provide just a financial snapshot of your organization. So again, you're going to provide the total cash expenses listed on your 990. If you don't have the 990, again, you'll use cash expenses from your previous year's bank statements. And then community access and engagement. So you're going to describe the need for your organization's programming, how you engage DC audiences, and then you're going to describe how your programming is accessible. And then community impact, you're going to describe the capacity and building needs for the organization. So this program is going to specifically ask that you provide at least one capacity building initiative, project, or program that's going to take place within that 1 year period, and what goals you're going to use as well. Or sorry, you're going to list 2 to 3 outcomes to measure the impact of that capacity building program as well. And then lastly, you'll provide a work samples and upload statement. So you'll be able to describe what work samples you're uploading and why they are a best representation of your organization, how they relate to your organization's arts and humanities or arts education content, and the scope of your services. Just a few tips as well when you're writing your narrative questions. Try to avoid buzzwords and hyperbole. So if you make claims in your application, be sure that you can back that up with your support material and your work samples. And then also, it's also a good idea to have someone outside of your organization review your narrative samples and also your application overall, just to get feedback to make sure it's clear and also meeting the criteria that's listed. Give a complete picture of your organization. Use accurate data in your application when it's available and where it's appropriate. And always look back at the review criteria. So if you get stuck answering one of the narrative questions, back at the review criteria that's connected to that section, and it'll kind of give you an idea of what panelists are going to be looking to read in that section. Any questions about the review criteria and narrative questions? You can also put them in the chat and Carrie can help you.
Hi, yes, I have a question
Yeah.
about just about the financials. So, if we're a new organization, like within our first year of operation, is there a budget template? I know the like allowable costs or allowable expenses are detailed in the RFA, but
hmm
when I go into the actual application portal, you ask for a budget narrative, but if we don't, should we be putting the budget for the grant award year, like the prospective budget in our application,
Yeah.
or is it just last year's expenses? Because, like, for example, if we're going to be doing a lot more programming in the future than the startup year, how should we reflect that best in the application?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, yeah, there's multiple places to put your current budget and the proposed budget. So the budget narrative, I think is where you'll put the proposed budget for the grant period. And that's a really just quick paragraph or two about how you'll be using the funds and why. And then your 990 is going to be able to give panelists an understanding of how your previous year's expenses were used. If you just have the 990 postcard, you're going to upload your bank statements so they can also see that. Trying to remember what the third uh section is because I have it in this PowerPoint. But yeah, there's multiple places where you can do your current budget and last year's budget and your future budget. So
Great. Is it where you
yeah.
list, like when we list, there's like projects, if we list the projects or initiatives, is a picture of the expenses of those initiatives helpful in that section, or leave it to the budget narrative?
So yeah, I would do it in the budget narrative, and then I believe there is a required document for your current budget. So however that's formatted for you should be okay. I think that we might have a budget template on our website. Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that we used to. And I can find that for you too and send it your way if you want to have it in a specific format. But yeah, we can also get into the required documents in a second because I think I go over what budget documents are required just to give an understanding to the panelists about your last fiscal year budget and your proposed budget too.
Amazing. Thank you.
hmm Yes, I see another question. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is in regards to what the postcard 990 says and the requirement for 51% arts and humanities activities. If you are a young organization and much of last year went to formation, but there were gifts and donations that were given that were not transacted on. How do you represent those? And then also like how do you provide a dollar amount to that? For instance, like if I received 20 tickets to something, how do I provide that in my narrative to signal that that would have otherwise been 51% of spending if I had spent it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Carrie, I'm going to defer to you about it though.
Um, so if you do have a lot of that supplemental narrative and documentation, a lot of that's going to come through in your budget narrative, um, where we're going to want to hear more about that. We do understand that for this grant, there are going to be a lot of cases where we may have some interesting interpretations of what our finances or what our budgets might look like, and a heavy reliance on in-kind donations and things like that. Um, Also, if you have some specific questions about things like this, what I do recommend for everyone is to reach out to Kayla, and you can also reach out to me. You can copy both of us on these messages. I've put Kayla's email, and I will put my email in the chat as well, because we do know there are going to be some special circumstances, and a lot of those, what we'd like to do is have a little bit of time to look at them because it's not something in many cases that we want to make a snap judgment on. We don't want to say definitively yes or no until we've had a chance to look it over. So I will put Kayla's email and my email back in the chat again, just so it's uh, easier to find. But for things like that, that's a case where you could send us, hey, this is an outline of what our budget is, and here's some additional documentation. And then we can give some guidance on here's how we think this would be best packaged to make it easy to understand. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, I will say the capacity building cohort is a little bit tricky because obviously it's newer organizations who might have a budget that's less than 50,000, so you submitted the IRS postcard. But yeah, again, we'll just be asking for those bank statements, and that's mostly also for CAH's internal review just to make sure that the eligibility requirements are met. So the panelists aren't going to look at each and everything you submitted and, be like they spent their money on this and that. So, yeah, but feel free to email me and Carrie with specifics. All right, so we're going to go into some of the support materials that you'll need to upload. So these are specifically related to those narrative questions that you answered and trying to connect those to any support material or work samples that you have. Support materials and work samples are a little bit different. Work samples are required, and the support materials, if you have them, great. We at least try and upload one, but don't feel like you have to upload all 6 for internally produced and externally produced. But support materials really just serve to strengthen your application and maybe back up some of the claims about your programming in the application as well. Um, so we do have some examples here of some support materials you can upload. Again, you can do internally produced items like curriculum, a strategic plan, marketing materials. If you do have a program that occurred last year that you're trying to do again this year, you can provide some information on how that programming went. You can also do external materials. So if you have any letters of support, recommendations, testimonials. Those are also great to add just to add some more context to the panelists about your organization's work. And then for work samples, those are going to be carry more weight in the application, just because those are going to be the clearest depiction of your application work and arts and humanities content. So the work sample should really be um, information about your programming, information about your organization, and go into more detail for the panelists to get some more context about what you have done in the community. And you can look at the request for applications as well for more information on suggestions for work samples. Yeah, we have a little bit more examples in there about what people typically upload. And then your resumes of key personnel are going to be another way for panelists to determine the artistic content of each application and to ensure that you have people on your staff that can perform the projects or programs that you're suggesting. So these resumes should really provide a background of your staff, how long they've been with the organization, and what experience they have. So that'll be another narrative support document you can upload. So just some important notes about work samples. So panelists are going to review within the 4 corners of the application. So we don't ask panelists to go outside the application, look up your organization, look up your social media, or look at your website for more context about your projects or programs or what you've done in the community so far. So make sure you provide as much detail and context as possible in your application so that you don't come back after the review and you're like, oh, I thought they were going to look us up. No, we don't have our panelists go outside of the application. You can provide a link to your website, but we don't require, again, for them to click on that and look at your website. You can also provide screenshots, though, as support materials or work samples from your website or social media. Some tips as well for work samples and support materials. So Review panelists are required to review each applicant's work samples. However, they're not guaranteed to look at work samples beyond the recommended limit. So those page limits for work samples is also listed in the request for applications, but I believe for written content, we ask for no more than 10 to 15 pages. Um, for videos, we ask for no more than 3 5-minute videos. And for audio, we ask for no more than 3 5-minute audio clips. So if you, for some reason, upload 20 pages of written material, the panelists might stop reading at the limit that we suggested. Make sure you clearly name and label and describe your work samples so that panelists know what they're looking at when they're looking through your application. And for project-based grants, again, you will provide information about projects and programming. So just include information about projects you've done in the past, or again, those support materials of testimonials or reviews of your projects and programs. Again, applicants, make sure that you're able to view and play all work samples before you submit your application. If it's not working on your end, it probably won't work for the panelists either. And if you do run into that issue, please reach out to us and we can try and help you with that technical difficulty. Make sure you're selecting recent high quality samples that are directly related to the application. Adding more than the recommended number of work samples may weaken it. Again, the panelists might not look at everything that you upload if it's more than the recommended amount. Make sure you carefully choose your work samples, and because these tend to make the biggest impact, and they kind of give more detail about your arts and humanities work. Panelists must be able to assess the skill level of the arts and humanities personnel involved in the project that's proposed. On the new platform, we do ask that all documents are uploaded as PDFs, so you won't be able to upload a Word document. Another thing that I thought of as well as a suggestion, try not to include links. So don't upload a PDF that's full of links. Like I said, we don't ask our panelists to click on links and exit the application. I know that sometimes it's easier to do that, but try as much as possible to embed everything in the application. Yeah. For video submissions, sometimes highly edited commercial or promotional videos aren't the best. They might be nice, but they might not provide panelists the best information about your project or your program or your initiatives in the community. So just make sure if you upload a video or pictures, make sure you're giving the context to that for the panelist. Make sure you're submitting high quality videos if you submit videos. Because you don't want it to be fuzzy or not be able to be seen by the panelists. If you do upload a video that's longer than 5 minutes, you can let the panelists know where they should start and end in the video. For audio submissions, oh, actually, let me go back a second. So in our previous portal, you were able to upload a link to a YouTube video and it would embed the video in the application for you. Submittable does not allow that, so you will have to download the video and upload it to the portal. There's multiple different ways to do that. Usually I just look up like MP4 download of a YouTube video. You might be able to just copy and paste the link and get a download from there. But just a heads up, if you are uploading videos, you'll have to have it saved on your computer. I believe the same thing goes for audio submissions, but audio files can only play from start to finish. If they're longer than 5 minutes, please let panelists know where to end. For audio submissions with visual components, consider submitting as a video clip instead. And again, you can take screenshots as well of websites or social medias. There's multiple ways to do that to be able to upload them. There's some shortcuts on your keyboard. I know on Macs, there's a button that you can just press to take a screenshot. There's also the snipping tool for Windows. So if you do have a picture that you want to upload, but you don't have it on your computer, you can also try and just take a screenshot of it. Any questions about uploads for support materials and work samples? All right. So some of the required organizational documents that we'll ask for is a balance sheet, your current organizational budget, a profit and loss statement, your certificate of clean hands, certificate of liability insurance. For this, if you don't currently have liability insurance, you can also submit a quote for liability insurance, just so you're not spending money on insurance that maybe you won't end up needing. We'll ask for the IRS Form 990 or your postcard 990. Along with the postcard, you'll submit your organization's last year's bank statements, a current board of directors list, resumes of key personnel, an IRS letter of determination that's dated at least 1 year prior to the deadline of the application. And again, look at the request for application for further information on the organization documents, but we will go into more detail about them. So for your list of current board of directors, make sure you're providing the roles. Don't just upload like a picture of your organization chart. That might not give the panelists the best context about it. So make sure you're providing the names, their roles, and their responsibilities, and sometimes also including the wards that they live in DC, just to showcase that your board is made up of residents of DC. Not a requirement though, but if you have that information, you can provide it. Again, resumes of key personnel. Examples can include artistic managing, executive directors, arts educators, etc. Make sure you're providing their roles, areas of responsibilities, and if they are DC residents, indicate that. Panelists must be able to assess the skill level of the artists and administrators involved in your work. So again, don't just upload a screenshot, or maybe don't just upload somebody's bio. Make sure that you're giving as much information to the panelists as possible about what your personnel do at your organization and what experience they have to be able to produce your programmings and projects. You'll also include your IRS letter of determination. Oh, wait, I see there's a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. So to the point on the personnel
Mhm.
resume, so a big part of applying for this grant is aspirational, because you're thinking that your organization can grow, and then it's speculative. You're also saying this is how my organization can grow.
Mhm.
When you are asking for the um, personnel and assessing their skill level, if part of the grant is going to go towards hiring personnel, do we provide with a job description of who the hire would be, and would that satisfy the need? If you're like forward looking, this grant will be used towards X, Y, and Z. This is the personnel that will be hired. This is the job description. Does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. If you already know who you want to hire in the position and you have their information, I would say include that. If not, you can put in the description in the application about how the funds will be used for capacity building. You can say that you're going to use it to hire somebody on board to do a specific role for your organization. Another thing to note too, I know not everybody has organizations that have like 20 full-time people. It's okay if you just have, maybe 3 full-time people that you include resumes for. Um, yeah, so to your point though, you can probably just put that in the description about the capacity building initiatives, but if you know who you want in the position, you could include the resume.
Thank you.
Mhm. And so you'll also include your IRS letter of determination, your IRS Form 990. And you'll also include an IRS form W-9. We'll get into a little bit more about how to fill out that W-9 and make sure you have the most accurate one. Um, but some points about this, you cannot use a PO box for the address on your W-9. Um, and make sure that the address matches across your document. So make sure it has the same address as your certificate of clean hands. That's the biggest one. And make sure that it also matches what might be on your organization profile in the grants portal. So again, you'll need a certificate of clean hands that's dated no more than 30 days prior to the application deadline. We'll get into a little bit more about how to obtain one if you do not have one, and what we're looking for on it. Make sure that the EIN matches on your clean hands and your W-9. You'll also fill out a statement of certification, um, which you can upload at the time of the application. This is really just to let CAH know who's going to be the manager of your grant, who we can get into contact with. So, as we were talking about earlier, some documents that you'll include for a financial snapshot of your organization. You're going to include the IRS Form 990 from the most recent fiscal year, or again, you'll upload the bank statements from the most recent fiscal year. You'll upload your current organizational budget, and then you'll also include projects and programming section. So, uh, in the section that asks you to list at least one project or program, you'll include what the cost of that program would be. The next slide is a video, so we'll see if the volume works. Please let me know if it is.
There's no audio, but you can find it on our website.
Whoops. Okay. Well, actually, I accidentally put it on twice. Well, that's okay because I have a slide that goes into it. So, that video is for the IRS form W-9. And so what we're going to be looking for your W-9 is that it's the most recent version, which would be March 2024. You can find that in the top left corner to make sure you have the current one. Make sure it's not 2018. Um, Make sure that your organization name matches across all of your documents. I know we had a question before this meeting about if you do business under a different name. If you do, make sure you have the name that is that you use for your taxes, and you can also put DBA on the W-9. Make sure you check the correct box in section 3, so you should be checking as a 501c3 nonprofit. Make sure that the address matches across all of your documents as well. Ensure that you put your organization's EIN number, so you won't be putting a social security number, you'll be doing your organization's tax ID. And we do ask that the signature is written. So I know that a lot of signature platforms let you type in a signature in a signature-like font, but we will need it to be written out. And make sure that you're uploading that as a W-9 as well. You'll be able to find a copy of a 2024 W-9 on our website. We can put the link into our chat as well. I think it might also be linked on the application. For your certificate of liability insurance, again, if you don't have this already and you don't want to move forward with the payment yet until you know you're awarded, please just upload a quote for general liability insurance. So in the description of operations box, also I'll say the certificate of liability insurance you can ask for from your insurance provider. They'll know what it is and they'll know how to fill it out on your behalf. But just ask them to include in the description of operations this language that the government of the District of Columbia and its officers, employees, agents, and volunteers are named as additional insured. And then also ensure that you have the waiver of subrogation on the form as well. And then the certificate holder should be us. So you'll have our address in the certificate holder box as well. If you have further questions about the general liability insurance, please reach out to me. I know that it can be kind of confusing. But again, you're welcome to also upload general liability insurance quotes in the application. So for the certificate of clean hands, if you already have one, or if you don't have one, you're going to apply on My Tax DC. So that's mytax.dc.gov. And you'll be able to download a PDF of your certificate once you obtain one. If you're not able to obtain a certificate of clean hands, please reach out to us as soon as you can. Some information that we're going to be looking for on the clean hands is going to be the notice number, because we're going to check the clean hands multiple times to make sure that it's compliant. And then also you'll want to ensure that the name on your clean hands is your organization, the address on your clean hands matches your W-9, and that your organization's EIN matches on your W-9 and certificate of clean hands. If you already have a clean hands, you just want to validate it, you can also go to mytaxdc.gov. You'll scroll down and you'll click on validate a certificate of clean hands. You'll fill out the notice number and your EIN, and then you'll be able to download a PDF version of that to upload. For the statement of certification, you're just going to fill out your organization's name. You're going to indicate that it's a 501c3 nonprofit. You'll provide the address. You'll also include what grant program it is. So you're going to put general operating support for the grant program. You'll also, for the individual section, you're going to include the information of the individual who's going to be managing your grant. So who can CAH reach out to discuss your grant on behalf of the organization in the second section. So you'll include your name, your address if it's different, your phone number, and your email. And again, there's a copy of this available on our website. I think that it's also linked in the application too. And then the last page of the statement of certification, you'll just want to sign it, put your name, address, contact information, and the date. Some tips for filling out these documents. For the statement of certification, you're going to fill out a new one for each grant program. So if you're applying to general operating support, and then you're also going to apply for projects, events, and festivals, you're going to fill out a different one for each program, just because there is that section that asks for which program. Um, you're going to need to use a e-signature tool or sign it and scan and upload it, but there are different tools online that you can use to be able to sign the PDF document. So there's DocuSign, there's Adobe. I think you can also do it on Canva. I know that Mac computers also have the option to input a written signature. If you need help putting a written signature on your documents, please reach out to me or Carrie, and we can send you something on Adobe Sign. For the certificate of insurance, if you already have it and you want your insurance to send you a form, I would reach out to them and ask for the Accord certificate of insurance form, and we can also send you a blank copy if you need that as well. For a certificate of clean hands, again, we are required to check it multiple times. So if you're non-compliant right now, I would reach out to the tax office as soon as possible so that it is compliant by the application deadline. And again, you will have to upload most documents as a PDF in the system. So you won't be able to upload a Word document. There's different ways that you can save PDF versions of work samples or support material. I know that there's now apps on your phone where you can scan it and it'll make it a PDF, but you can also convert it on your computer or in Canva. Any questions about the required uploads? All right, well, that was our last section, but I will say that If you're interested in being a review panelist for any of our other grant programs, we have plenty of them opening up in the summer. Please reach out to me or Carrie, and we can send you the online application to sign up and put in that you're interested in being a review panelist. Um, Again, it's usually about 20, 25 applications you'll review. You'll attend an online panel. You'll give feedback and scoring for applications. You wouldn't be able to do it for this grant program since you're applying for it. But any of our other grant programs, you're welcome to sign up to be a review panelist. Just a little bit about the time commitment. So we do try and give our panelists 3 to 4 weeks to review applications. Again, you'll then attend an online panel review day. It's usually just one day for a few hours that you'll go over each of the applications. But again, if you have questions about that, please reach out to me or Carrie, and we can let you know a little bit more information on being a review panelist. The last little bit too, the staff contacts for general operating support are me, Carrie, and Terrell Johnson. Here are our emails, but we'll also put them in the chat as well. But now is a good time to just ask any questions that you may still have. I'll stop sharing my screen. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to come off mute.
I have a question. What are the most common reasons capacity building applications are deemed not competitive or not eligible? And what are some of the things that applicants at this stage can do to ensure that whatever they are submitting ahead of the deadline is as complete and as ready to be reviewed as possible?
Yeah, I would say the biggest one is the certificate of clean hands. Lots of people run into the issue of making sure that they have a compliant clean hands and making sure that the clean hands has their organization's information. So if you don't already have a certificate of clean hands, I would start working on that as soon as possible and making sure that's compliant. Other reasons that applicants may be deemed ineligible is if you haven't been a 501(c)(3) for an entire year, or if the core mission of your organization isn't for the arts and humanities. I know that some people get some of our programs confused and might try to apply for this program for or yeah, this grant program for a specific project. If you want funds for just a project and not your entire organization, we do have other grant opportunities for that as well.
Follow up on that one
Mhm.
year requirement. Is it one fiscal year or is it one calendar year?
So it's whatever the date is on your letter of determination should be for at least 1 year before the grant application closes. So it should at least be from May 2025.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to catch up to the chat questions. If we apply for GOS capacity building, would we still be able to apply for PEF as well? Yes, you can apply for projects, events, and festivals and receive that. The only applicants who wouldn't be able to apply for PEF are for the GOS generalists and service categories. So if you were awarded capacity building this year, 2027, you would be able to also accept a PEF award. But if you applied to GOS again the year after that, you wouldn't be able to have PEF.
Hello, Kayla. I have a
Hello.
question.
Mhm.
Okay, so you said something about the clean hand certificate. So if I have the tax.gov, and let's say it was my personal taxes, that mean that clean hands will come out with just my name on it. So that means I will have to go in and do like another account for tax.gov for my organization, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And I know that they're also doing a new thing, I guess, where they might tie personal taxes with your organization's taxes. something complicated has been happening. If that happens, let us know. But yeah, you will have to apply for a clean hands just for your organization so that it has the organization name and address on it.
Yeah, because it has mine, and I had to go back and
Okay.
look. I was like, wait a minute, I think it has
Yeah.
my name on it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you should be able to call them and work that out. It doesn't take too much time to be able to fix that.
Okay.
But I would always suggest calling the tax office rather than emailing because they take a very long time to get back via email. We use an address for executive director as our physical address, but our organization hosts events at different venues, never at our physical address. Would this create any problems for the grant? I don't believe so. Just because this isn't a project-based grant, this is for operating support for your organization. So as long as your organization's address is in DC, and that's the address that you use across all your documents, you should be okay. Any other questions? Again, if you have questions that come up while you're filling out the application, please feel free to join one of our live call or live chats that are on Fridays from 1:30 to 3. And we can answer any questions that you might have while you're filling out the questions or uploading documents.
I have another follow-up question to
Mhm.
the time period. So the grant award would be for a period starting October 2026 through July through what is it, September 2027, correct?
Yes.
When you say that the organization needs to be a year in business, is that 1 year to the deadline of the grant or 1 year to the execution of the grant award?
That is a good question. I guess if you want to email me or maybe set up a call with me so we can talk more specifically about um your organization's how long you've been a 501(c)(3).
Mhm.
We do want it to be within the time frame that the grant application closes. But yeah, we can talk more
It's 1
specifics
o'clock.
about that.
Okay, I'll email you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
And Kayla, I tried to get a lot of questions answered in the chat, but I will also
Yeah.
share, save this,
Okay.
and we will put out a FAQ Q&A on our website that folks can keep up with. We do have we've been recording this as well, so we will post this on our website, but we'll make sure that we get a Q&A up for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much. If you come up with any questions, feel free to email me or attend one of our live chats. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you all.